never know when you plan a thing like this how many people are coming, but it really says a lot about the community, how many people are here, and how diverse the group is in this room, and how many schools are represented. It really makes us feel really good. Eli Shapiro. I have the schus of being the first person in this community to find Eli Shapiro. Okay? He was a lifeguard in camp, and I said, come teach in Darche. He was 19 years old. And since he knew lifeguarding, I said, teach a health class. And he came to Darche, and he taught health. And then I started the Tova program, which is a mentoring program that is in existence for the past 20-odd years. And I needed somebody to be like the chief mentor of all these young teens that we were helping at that time. Eli Shapiro was the first mentor in the Tova program. So I found him early. But then he went on to many bigger and better things. And I have to say, while we were all struggling as a group of mechanchim of what to do about the challenge of the internet, should we ban it? Impossible. Should we try to limit it, filter it, and all the efforts that have gone on over the past 20 years to help people confront the internet and deal with it, there's no better way of dealing with the issues that technology can bring than the program that Eli Shapiro put together called Digital Citizenship. I want to thank him for that. In fact, at the Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, we have a 3-year curriculum along the lines of digital citizenship because we believe that we should prepare our young elementary school students for what's coming in front of them. The problem is, and I'm going to tell you a quick story, the problem is we thought we were great people saying we're going to give digital citizenship in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. What we didn't realize is how much they're exposed in preschool, 1st, and 2nd grade. And this is a story that just happened, and I don't mind sharing because we all have to be open with one community. So there was a group of 2nd graders that were having social issues, 2nd grade girls. It was like girl dramas, and some of the women wouldn't understand girl drama. Girl drama in 2nd grade. We don't usually see girl drama in 2nd grade. It usually happens about 5th grade. But here we had this year girl drama in the 2nd grade. What was going on? We drilled down. We found out there were about 10 girls who were in a chat. Now, I don't think it was a WhatsApp chat. I think they were just putting together their own chat on either their telephone or their devices, and they were speaking to each other. And I couldn't believe it. And what was going on was that girl A would make a play date arrangement with girl B in front of the chat with the other 8 girls. The other 8 girls would get jealous, and they were fighting. So I called everybody, and I said, you guys are too young. You're just too young. I had to email. This is the Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, not Darche. Okay, Hebrew Academy of Long Beach sent out an email. No chats in 2nd grade. We have a 3-year digital citizenship curriculum. We're going to teach them how to chat properly in an appropriate way without cyberbullying, get off the chats, and Baruch Hashem, they listen to me. So it's a very critical time. I know that I have seen, and maybe you have experienced this, that as you get your newest and latest iPhone 10 or 11, so your old iPhone 5 is still sitting around the house, and your child's bothering you, and you want to play a game, or they want to play games, say, here, you can have my iPhone 5. It's not even a phone anymore. Here's the iPhone 5. Go get some games, download some apps, get some games, and have some fun. Keep busy. Stay out of my hair. There are issues that come along with that type of technology and giving technology to children. It's not that anyone here is going to say don't do it. I think tonight's about how to do it. So Baruch Hashem, we have a Dr. Eli Shapiro in this community who is the biggest expert in this country on this issue. Please welcome him, and you will learn a lot from him. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words. Appreciate that. Rabbi Feiner, I feel a little guilty having gone to Barclay Center for the Siyam HaShas, where it was nice and cozy. Wow, what a big crowd. Quite remarkable. I do want to apologize. I know there was some confusion early on, and those of you that are here tonight that came to hear Ben Shapiro, I apologize. I hope I am as entertaining as he is. And for the other half of you that came to hear Mordechai Shapiro, sorry as well. He is sitting back there, so you can speak to him afterwards. Yeah. So, wow, I'm sorry. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Everybody squeeze in a little bit. All right, where were we? All right, so just by raise of hands, how many of you think we're here to talk about the internet and internet safety? It's okay, don't be shy. We're small, we're not, well, okay, good. All right, what I want you to do is I want you to think a little bit differently. I want you to change the paradigm, that we're not just talking about the internet. We are aware of the content, we are aware of the challenges that the internet presents, but we are thinking about technology as a whole. Technology is our relationship with the devices and advancements that are around us. We all have smartphones, we all have computers, we all have iPads, we all have smartwatches. Some of us have, I don't have a smartwatch. If anyone would like to buy me one, I would appreciate it. I don't have one yet. But we are really inundated with technology. Just by a raise of hands, how many of you experience what we call phantom vibrations? That's when your body's vibrating, but your phone is somewhere else. You know what, it can't just be me and this guy over here. I mean, okay, thank you. Thank you. So it's remarkable. Literally, we do not know where our bodies end and the technology begins. We live in a time where we are so inundated and so enmeshed with our technology, that is what we are experiencing. Physical manifestations of a vibration that may or may not come. But it's not a new concept. 89% of people experience this and have been experiencing this since 2012. So when we think about technology, when we think of the impact that it's having on us physically, just imagine what it's having on us on developmentally, psychologically, socially, all these other challenges that it presents. So Mr. Altaby mentioned that I started a program called the Digital Citizenship Project. It's actually pretty interesting. When we started it, the President, Barack Obama was president at the time, and people thought that it was a pathway to U.S. citizenship on the internet. So we would get phone calls for, under Trump, no one thinks that. There's been no confusion. So the Digital Citizenship Project, what does that mean? What is it? And it is the norms of appropriate and responsible behavior when it comes to technology. The norms of appropriate and responsible behavior. So when you think about that, if I were to ask you, if someone comes out to speak and you have a nice large crowd and the first thing that they do is take a selfie, is that normal? You can think about it. You don't have to say no right away. Is that appropriate? Is that responsible? So what's interesting is that I really get mixed reactions to that. Some people say, no, absolutely not. Usually they're over 30. And then, people under 30 are like, yeah, what's the problem with that? I was at a wedding not too long ago where the brother of the bride was walking down the aisle. I have an aisle. So he walked down the aisle, and he stopped right about to get to a chuppah, pulls out a selfie stick, and takes a picture. Right? So I'm looking at your faces. Some of you are horrified. Others of you looking at your face, you're like, wow, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? You can get rid of a photographer at your next Simpa just by handing out selfie sticks. It's remarkable. And what we decide is normal and appropriate, we don't have full agreement on. Every community will feel slightly differently about different issues. A friend of mine was at a wedding, and he took this picture. Just so none of you think I'm cyberbullying, everyone in the picture gave me permission to use it. Is that normal? Is that appropriate? Is that responsible? So we can debate that. This individual actually likes being known as the questionable selfie guy. And I wasn't going to include this picture in tonight's speech, but he insisted on it. So there it is. So when we think about technology, it's an amazing thing because, as Orthodox Jews, we like to put things in boxes, kosher, treif, mutter, usher, we're comfortable with that. When it comes to technology, it's not quite that simple. It's not quite that simple just to say good, bad, etc. I like to say that in today's day and age, we live in the best of times, we live in the worst of times. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yeah, you're nodding your head, but you can Google it. Yeah. Yes, very good, Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. Age of wisdom, age of foolishness. And I think really if we were to pinpoint the time that we live in, we are living in the age of wisdom and the age of foolishness. Technology is amazing. It offers us so much, so much. I mean, really, we live in this wonderful time. We have accessibility, productivity, information, connectivity. It's really awesome. It's really wonderful. I really think on the connectivity front, I connect to it more today than ever before. I have a daughter who's in Eretz Yisrael, and we're able to FaceTime, to communicate. And I know what a lot of you are thinking is, how can a guy so young have a daughter in Eretz Yisrael? One moisturizer is actually what does it. So it's amazing connectivity opportunity, but the challenges that it creates, the whole idea of sending a child off to a year in Israel is this total institution, is this idea that they are fully immersed in the experience, not tethered to home. So we have these challenges that, on the one hand, we can connect and we can see each other, and it's amazing. On the other hand, if they're calling for every question, every concern, every problem, are they really developing the skills necessary to be successful in life? There was a study done in the Israeli Defense Force, and they found that entry-level soldiers were not rising to leadership positions that they would have expected. And what they found was very interesting, that the mothers of these soldiers would text the commanding officers. Don't make my boy run too hard. When he has too much dairy, he gets a tummy ache. You know, things like that. And similarly, the soldiers themselves would not make a decision on their own. They would not, any basic decision, they would text the commanding officer. So they were never going through the cognitive process, the challenge of thinking, what's going to happen? What are the outcomes of this decision? They didn't have the opportunity to make good decisions and feel good about them. They didn't have the opportunity to make bad decisions and learn from them. And so developing grit and resilience becomes a challenge for this generation because technology is so easy. When I was a kid, if I wanted a song from the radio, so I would sit around pretty much all day, and you know, a lot of you know what I'm talking about. You know, you had to have that tape recorder with the play button with a little orange button in the middle of it that you'd push. So you know, Sunday morning, Casey Kasem, Top 100, and you'd wait for the song, and you'd get it, right? So a few hours for any given song. But today, what do we do when we want a song? Alexa, play this, or you know, Spotify, or whatever it is. The opportunities for grit and resilience and developing these important life skills are diminished. And if we're not careful, if we're not approaching it in a strategic way, then our children are going to grow up lacking these skills. So technology is amazing. It offers accessibility, productivity, information, connectivity, but we're also living in the worst of times. Social impact, behavioral, psychological, day-to-day, these are all challenges that we're seeing in this age of technology. And so these core 4 areas are something that I speak about frequently. And it's quite remarkable, you know, when I started this not too long ago, we were speaking basically to high school kids, and then, you know, middle school kids, and now that we're speaking to preschoolers, the parents of preschoolers, it's remarkable the impact, the early impact that we're seeing. A lot of parents ask me for what I call the magic pill. The magic pill is just, what age should I get my child a device? What's that perfect age? What's the exact amount of screen time that they'll benefit from it and not have a problem? What filter should I get? What's the one filter that'll solve all my problems? And these are magic pill questions, and technology is a complex issue. It's not a simple equation. And so complex problems require complex answers, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. But the first thing I do want to say is I love technology. How many of you would join me in that statement? You love technology? Only a few of you. Ari, I know you love technology. Yeah. So yeah, I love technology. I mean, if you don't love technology and you don't love the internet, you're obviously not spending enough time in the Yeshiva World Coffee Room, because that is where it is at, I will tell you. So the truth is, the world really does love technology. 6 billion out of the world's 7 billion people own a mobile phone, but only 4.5 billion people have a toilet. Yeah. So I do get pushback from some audiences. They say, what do you do on a toilet if you don't have a phone? I get it, I hear. Now, by the way, this is a UN study. I don't know if everyone believes UN studies. That's a separate issue. We also have a generational disconnect. Our kids today seem to know more about technology than we do, even our preschoolers. I know some of you go to your kids to unlock your iCloud passwords, and actually, someone told me a story that they were taking a nap on a Sunday afternoon, and their 3-year-old came into the room and took their phone, took their finger, put their finger on the phone, and he wasn't sure whether to be angry or proud. But we do have a generational disconnect. I like this text between a mother and child. Your great aunt just passed away, LOL. Why is that funny? It's not funny, David. What do you mean? Mom, LOL means laughing out loud. Oh my goodness, I sent that to everyone. I thought it meant lots of love. Yeah, we're all laughing, but we've all been there where we didn't quite get the lingo, right? Everybody knows what FOMO is? Excellent. We have a bilingual group here. Fantastic. But what's amazing is we know things that our kids will never know. They will never understand this. They will not know what this is. They definitely don't know what this is. In Chabad, they tell me it's a pushka, so I don't know. They most certainly do not know the relationship between these two items. I see some of the younger parents in here don't know either, so if you can just turn to someone older, they will explain. This goes along with a lot of my teenage years as well. So we have challenges today. We have challenges in the realm of social media. Everybody know what these three social media icons are? We have Snapchat, WhatsApp, and Instagram. People like to push back on the WhatsApp. They say it's not really social media. Let's call it social networking so we can move on. And so these are some of the challenges that we're facing today in the area of social media. Gaming is very big. I think we've all heard of Fortnite. Yeah. Many of you have kids that are older than, I guess, 5. They've told you about Fortnite. Now, Fortnite is a remarkable game. It's highly addictive. People really are into it. In fact, 35% of kids have skipped school to play Fortnite. It's quite 35% of Fortnite playing kids. But what's really remarkable is 20% of Fortnite playing adults have skipped work to play Fortnite. That's quite remarkable. So I want to share with you what this looks like in its worst form. This is a tornado victim, and you'll notice there's a truck upside down by his house there, and let's see what he has to say about Fortnite.
I was sitting at home, and I was playing Fortnite, and all of a sudden I just hear a bunch of noise, and I look out the window, and I start seeing the roof come off the houses in front of me. But then I sit back down because I only got like a couple people left in my gang. I was going to try to finish the game.
And what's going through your mind as you said you're in the bathroom with your sister and nephew?
I'm like, honestly, I was just thinking about the game.
This is what happens when you play too much Fortnite. So we have social media, we have gaming, we have videos, Netflix, YouTube. We get into this vortex with YouTube in particular. Even when we're doing something productive, I would look up something like bird migratory patterns, because, like I said, I have no life and that interests me. So bird migratory patterns, and then it suggests other videos, like the history of flight. And then every time there's a history of flight video, you always see the Hindenburg disaster. And so somehow that leads to the history of Led Zeppelin. I'm not really sure where that connection comes in. But this is what happens, and we get into this vortex. It's 4 hours later, and we as adults, if we have trouble regulating our own behaviors with technology, how do we expect our high schoolers, our middle schoolers, and most certainly our preschoolers to regulate their technology use? So it comes on us. So I'm going to move forward. They wouldn't give me the Wi-Fi password here, so I'm going to log in the old-fashioned way. Yay! You've got mail. No, you don't. No one had mail in the 90s. 90s were quite amazing because we would actually wait like 20 minutes to get online. We'd get those discs, 99 free hours, and we'd get a bunch of phone numbers, and like none of the phone numbers would work, so we'd have to go down the list, and we'd only get to a number that would work, but we wouldn't want to tell any of our neighbors because we didn't want them to use the phone number. And then we'd finally get online, and someone in our house would pick up the phone, disconnect it. And then we'd make like some sort of public statement, I'm going online, and then we'd get there and there was nothing there. There was nothing there yet. But we did have a certain menuchas hanefesh, a certain peace, a certain calm that we just don't have today. It's a peacefulness that we just don't have it anymore, and it's such a loss. And I think people like that just because it reminds us of that time. So when you think about the impacted domains, what I'm going to do, the order of what I'm going to speak about is I'm going to talk about what this looks like in teenagers and pre-teenagers, and then sort of bring it back to the preschool years on how to prevent some of these challenges that we're seeing. So behaviorally, socially, psychologically, day to day, these are all challenges that we see specifically with digital technology and gaming and videos and social media. And part of the paradigm we talked about before, switching this to technology, it's not just about the content of the internet, assuming that the content is perfectly fine. I remember I was at a conference, and there was a nice Hasidic family pushing their 2-year-old in a stroller in the lobby of this conference, and the child had a DVD player on their lap, and they were watching the Twins from France. Right, the Twins from France, everybody familiar with that? Yeah. So I thought, okay, no big deal. But then 3 hours later, I saw that same couple pushing the kid in the stroller with the DVD player, still watching the Twins from France. Right? You think, so the content's fine. And I know the obvious question here is, where do you get such good battery life out of a DVD player? Is what I was wondering. But the second question is, I don't believe that these parents have any thought that what they might be doing could be harmful to their child, or what that impact might be. But we're seeing, from a behavioral standpoint, we are creating dependence, our children's dependence on technology, dependence, distraction, impulsivity, disinhibition, sleep. These are all areas around technology that we see challenges with. Dependence, distraction, I think we can all relate to that. Impulsivity is when we are thinking about, when we put things out there without thinking about the consequences. We've all done that. We've all sent out a text or an email or a tweet or something where we said, maybe I shouldn't have done that, right? That's impulsivity. And when kids have technology, when high schoolers and middle schoolers, and even younger now, when kids are in second grade in grade level chats, they are not going to have that degree of self-restraint and self-control to be able to project what the impact might be, that impulsivity. When I was a kid, if I was angry at someone, I was told, write them a letter, put it in an envelope, you wait a week, and then by the time you're ready to send it, usually the issue's resolved itself. We don't do that anymore. The power of technology allows us, it gives us the power to be impulsive. What did Uncle Ben, Spider-Man's uncle, say about it? With great power comes great responsibility. Excellent. This is a well-versed group. We went from Dickens to Marvel, which is quite amazing. So we have impulsivity. We have disinhibition. We do and say things online that we wouldn't normally do and say. There's something about the digital realm that promotes this disinhibition. Right? And it's not a new concept. Anyone who took Psych 101 learned about Stanley Milgram and the electroshock studies. What they found was that obedience, people tended to be obedient, but when they were made to be anonymous, they delivered longer, stronger, even fatal shocks. So this idea of the digital realm promoting negative behavior is basic anonymity, whether it's pure anonymity, like you're using a fake screen name, or whether it's relative anonymity. Right? So these are the challenges that our preschoolers are growing up into. Sleep is a huge issue. Most teenagers, some about 80% of teenagers today say they stay up late as a result of their technology. 80% are staying up late. And these are the kids that are reporting that. And so what happens, it's not just about staying up late on their devices. The artificial light from the phones makes it harder to fall asleep. It impacts melatonin production in the brain. And assuming that your child, your preschooler, doesn't have a device next to their bed. I hope they don't have a device next to their bed. But the vibrating noises keep this up. But just the blue light alone is having an impact on our sleep. Harvard did this amazing study where they compared reading an e-reader at bedtime and reading a book at bedtime. And you don't have to have gone to Harvard to figure out what happens. What happens when you read a book at bedtime? Yeah, you fall asleep. I have a book on my nightstand that I've been reading for the last 8 months, and I'm still on page 2. And it's not because I learned the Chafetz Chaim that after 8 months I'm still on page 2. That was for Rabbi Feiner. Okay. So this idea, and what they found was that the e-reader actually made it more difficult to fall asleep. So how many of us let our children watch on our devices or on an iPad when it's bedtime? How many of us give them the, okay, well, let's let them watch and maybe that'll help. The devices themselves are making it difficult for our kids to fall asleep. Any educator can tell you when a child comes into school and they didn't get a good night's sleep. In fact, the #1 predictor of your child being successful on any given day in school, both socially and academically, is the quality of the sleep they had the night before. If they get a good night's sleep, they can tolerate the day. If they didn't get a good night's sleep, they can't handle anything. So that's a big challenge. So this is a baseball player in a dugout with a phone. Those of you that follow the World Series know that you're not supposed to have a phone in the dugout. What's interesting, this is really just a slide to remind me to tell you about the time I had a meeting with the New York Mets. Any Mets fans here? There's always one. Even here, there's one. We're in Queens. All right, one guy in the back. All right, so this story is for the guy in the back. All right. So I had a meeting with the New York Mets, and they were telling me about one of their players that was taking frequent bathroom breaks during the game. Think about it, taking frequent bathroom breaks during the game, and they were originally concerned that there was a medical issue, but as it turns out, he was updating his Instagram feed during the game. He's a professional baseball player. So you have to imagine, what if 45,000 people were to come to watch you work? Well, it's the Mets, so like 10,000 people would come to watch you work, right? So, you know, that degree of dependence, behavioral dependence on having to check the device really is so intense. And here, you know, these guys are young, they're in their 20s, but growing up, we develop these patterns, we develop these habits, we develop these dependencies. So there's some of the behavioral concerns. Socially, we see digital distractions, social dependence, online aggression, cyberbullying, miscommunication, all these things around the digital realm. I think we've all been there where we sent a text and the person completely misunderstood what we meant, right? Or vice versa, we completely misunderstood what the, is my time up? No. Or the person, right? Miscommunication. Morabian, a researcher, identifies that 80% of communication is paraverbal. So it's everything but the words themselves. So it's the tone, the volume, the intonation. It's like on Friday night, after you wash for hamotzi before you have the challah, you have whole conversations without saying a word. Right? So it's everything but the words. But in the digital realm, we only have the words. So I get pushback from the millennials. Any millennials here? Good, let's talk about them. Oh, there are? Let's not talk about them. Okay. No, so I get pushback saying, well, we have emojis today, right? Emojis. Now, emojis, you know, they actually help. They are helpful, I'll give it that. But a lot of times I don't understand what the emoji means. There are so many of them now. What's the one with the waterfalls in the eyes? Is that a happy one or a sad one? Happy sad. I don't know. So, there was a shotgun that was telling me a story. She had set a couple up. They were dating for a while. And the guy, I guess he used an Apple and she used some other device. And he sent her a text message, looking forward to seeing you tonight, with like an emoji of flowers, right? But for some reason, her device interpreted that as a gun. Yeah. You're laughing. They weren't. They almost broke up until they figured out what the whole story was. So we have these miscommunication issues and these social impact. You know, we see scenes like this all the time. I actually refer to this as a regression to parallel play. The same way like 2-year-olds playing next to each other but not with each other, we as adults are often playing next to each other but not with each other. UCLA did a fascinating study where they measured kids' ability to read facial expression and social cues, which is the foundation for social connectivity. So reading facial expressions and social cues, and then they sent them to, they got a baseline and sent them to sleepaway camp without any technology. And they measured them again only 5 days later. And in 5 days, they found that their ability to read facial expressions, social cues, and form more meaningful connections vastly improved. After only 5 days without technology. That's amazing because it teaches us two very important things. One is digital technology is having a negative impact on the quality of our social connectivity. But two, we can repair it. We can repair it by separating from technology. When do we connect best with our spouses and our children? When is that? I was going to say Thanksgiving, but Shabbos works too. Yeah, Shabbos is amazing. You can't match that quality, and it's really because we don't have the technology distracting us. In my own home, we do something called going dark for dinner, where there's no technology around dinner time. So you can bring a little bit of Shabbos into the week, but you can't compare the quality of it. But it is amazing that we have this opportunity. I go out to dinner with a group of friends every once in a while, and in order for us to make a meaningful evening of it, we stack our phones, and whoever grabs their phone first has to pay for dinner. It's a good idea, right? So here's the move, though. You seem excited by the idea, so I'll share my secret. I invite a friend who's completely addicted to his smartphone, and he's been paying for dinner for 3 years, and he hasn't figured it out yet. So we have issues around behavior. We have issues around social. Psychological is probably my favorite area. that we're seeing impact. We have anxiety, depression, isolation, addiction. Addiction is a tricky word because it has not yet been defined by the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual. But we do look at when the phone, when the device starts interfering with primary role obligation and functioning is certainly an area of concern. I think a question we always have to be asking ourselves, is the technology enhancing our lives or is it an intrusion in our lives? Right? That's a question we have to ask ourselves all the time and make adjustments based on that. And there are going to be certain days that it's an enhancement and certain days that it's an intrusion. But we always have to be thinking about that. Anxiety, depression. We've all been there where we forgot our cell phone at home and then we realize that and they're like, oh my gosh, I forgot my cell phone at home. No one can get in touch with me, right? We panic at first. I forgot my cell phone at home, no one can. And then those of us that are moderately well adjusted, it goes from the, oh yeah, I forgot my cell phone. No, I forgot my cell phone at home. No one can get in touch with me. And then like that calm and peace and menuchas hanefesh that we had in the AOL 90s days comes over us and it's nice. And so it's an amazing thing that we get so tethered to our devices and so connected that it's literally at all times having a negative impact. I'm not talking about like worst case scenario that you can't put your phone down, but that idea that our anxiety levels are elevated at all times because of our technology. Our kids are growing up into this world. The research is very clear. Avid cell phone use, kids report it enhances their lifestyle. It's the key to their social life. It's so important to them. But what the research tells us, the more importance they place on their technology, the more importance they place on their devices, the higher their levels of anxiety tend to be, the lower their levels of subjective well-being, meaning they tend not to be as happy, and the lower their academic performance as well. So that relationship that they have with their device is key in how they experience it psychologically. And we all know our kids are different, right? Each one of our kids approach technology differently. Some of our kids are, completely glued to it, and others are just, and we have to approach it differently with each child. I was raised as an only child, which was actually very, very frustrating for my 8 siblings. That was the case. But I think we have to approach raising kids today, looking at each one of our children and seeing what their specific needs are. And it's not just around technology, it's around everything. Some of our kids need more attention, less attention, more alone time, less alone time. Each one needs something different, and we have to approach it that way, certainly when it comes to technology. Oh, it's the baseball player again. I had a meeting with the Mets, so I don't know if you forgot about that. And so also we need to be wary of the exposure, what they're seeing. Everybody's familiar with the Momo situation that happened a little while ago. This was Momo. It's actually a pretty disturbing image, but kids were seeing this. One parent came over to me and told me they were thrilled about it because their child doesn't want to go on the internet anymore. So that's a strategy, I guess. We don't know longitudinally what the impact of that might be. But we're also seeing challenges in the day-to-day arena, schoolwork, exposure, physical health, criminal charges, college, employment. I wrote an article not too long ago, and it's so important to think about this early on in your children's digital careers, that your digital footprint will have more of an impact on career and life opportunities than your academic performance or just about anything else. Your digital footprint is the residue of what you do and say online. That's what people, when they look into you, when they Google you, that's what they see. And what's happening today for kids, their digital footprints are starting literally in utero. When the scan, you're putting the scans up and you're showing pictures, and then the birth, and then the bris, and then the kiddush, so off the bat they have a digital footprint that is starting at birth, even before they have the opportunity. But these digital footprints are really what create the public image of that person. So as they get older, when they put things on, the comments they make, the aggressive comments they make, the behaviors they engage online can actually impact them in so many ways. I often caution people not to be too political online. What happens is, let's just say you love President Trump and you're very vocal about that online. Or let's just say you don't love President Trump and you're very vocal about that online. At some point, you're going to come across someone that doesn't share your political opinion. And that person may be behind the desk about to offer you a job. And these are things that happen where our opportunities are impacted. And it's not just something as black and white as that. When kids are going to seminary or to college or to high school, People look in, people do Google searches. I know stories of kids that don't get into high schools because of their social media profiles. Colleges today are asking for you to disclose every one of your social media handles, your names on social media, before they will accept you. And then you have a choice. Well, is my social media something I should be proud of? Or do I lie about my names? If you lie and they find the name, then that's cause for dismissal. About 1.5 years, 2 years ago, Harvard rescinded 10 acceptance letters of students based on offensive comments they made in a private Facebook group. Now, these are kids that got into Harvard, so we have to assume that they're bright, they're disciplined, yet still they said things that basically caused them to miss out on a tremendous, tremendous opportunity as a result. So thinking about the social media, thinking about the digital footprints, what we put out there, what we say out online, and we have to understand the impulsivity, the disinhibition, all play into this, into what we put out there. And we need to start thinking about this when our kids are in preschool. We have to help them develop healthy habits around technology. So when we think about preschool development, some of the key areas, I think some of us forget or fail to recognize what an important, I guess this group doesn't, you're here tonight, so the important role that early childhood plays. From a developmental standpoint, these are the first foundational experiences that our kids are having, and this is going to be the foundation and the imprint of what they are experiencing moving forward. This is the beginning of everything. Attachment is in the first year or two of life. How they connect to you as parents. Regulation, their own behavioral regulations. What are we doing to help them regulate at that age? Dependence, learning is impacted. All of these key areas, critical stage of development in the preschool years between 1 and 5 are happening all at this time, and our approach on how technology is impacting that has to be very thoughtful and very deliberative. What are we exposing our children to? Not just the content. The content is certainly an issue, but the frequency, the screen time, do we know what it's doing? And the truth is, the answer is we don't. The answer is we don't have any longitudinal studies to really confirm what the impact is of early exposure to technology. So we do have the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they make some key recommendations. Under 18 months, avoid screen time. Under 18 months, avoid screen time. 2 to 5 years, under 1 hour a day. Now, the language is actually very interesting. They say limit up to 1 hour a day. So the idea is not to say, okay, we should expose them 1 hour a day. The idea is that we should limit if we can. It's critical that we understand that exposing them to screens at this early, impressionable age is going to have impacts much longer than just during this critical stage of development. The research found 87% of kids under 5 are exceeding their daily screen time recommendations. So 87% of kids are exceeding these hours, are exceeding this, and we don't know exactly what it's doing. We do have some inkling of what is happening. We do know that kids that spend even preschoolers, excessive amount of time in front of a screen perform lower in cognitive functions and cognitive tasks. We do know that. We know that some of the early findings in a longitudinal study that started in 2016, where they're doing MRIs on kids at set intervals and watching the brain, how it responds to social media, to technology. We are seeing a thinning of parts of the brain as a result of that, but we don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We just know that there are changes happening to the brain that can be problematic, certainly for preschool kids. And one of the things that I want to point out tonight that I don't think is really discussed much is that screen time is not one thing. It's not screen time. I see it as 3 types of screen times. We have consumption. Consumption is when you're just watching something, right? That's probably the least productive use of screen time. So you're watching a show or there's no interaction. You put your child in front of something, and there's nothing happening there. They're just viewing. So that's probably the least productive use of screen time. Then we have complementary screen time. Complementary is an interactive, so a game of some sorts. And of course, games should be age appropriate. We shouldn't be putting our 3-year-olds to play Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed or anything like that, or Fortnite for that matter. So our kids should, age appropriate games, right? So that's complementary. And then there's creative. Creative is actually when we're doing something to create something that actually enhances our experience. So we can't just lump screen time into one area. The creative component of screen time, I don't believe begins till well after preschool. So for preschoolers, we're really looking at two areas of potential screen time, consumption or complementary, and I think most of it is consumption. So when we're talking about that, it's so important as parents that if we're giving our children devices, if we're giving them access, certainly we should follow the guidelines of the American Pediatric Association, but if we are going to give it, we need to be really wary and really conscious and really thoughtful and deliberate of how we are giving our kids access. So 60 Minutes did a great report. I'm going to share two videos with you from that on how we are creating dependence amongst our preschoolers.
Anyways, the concern that investigators like I have is that we're sort of in the midst of a natural, kind of uncontrolled experiment on the next generation of children.
Dr. Dimitri Christakis at Seattle Children's Hospital was the lead author of the American Academy of Pediatric's most recent guidelines for screen time. They now recommend parents avoid digital media use except video chatting in children younger than 18 to 24 months.
So what we do know about babies playing with iPads is that they don't transfer what they learn from the iPad to the real world, which is to say that if you give a child an app where they play with virtual Legos, virtual blocks, and stack them, and then put real blocks in front of them, they start all over.
If they try to do it in real life, it's as if they've never done it before.
Exactly. They don't
so it's not a transferable
skill. They
skill.
don't transfer the knowledge from 2 dimensions to 3.
Dr. Christakis is one of the few scientists who've already done experiments on the influence screens have on children under the age of 2. It's a critical period for human brain development.
If you're concerned about your teenager being addicted to their iPhone, your infant is much more vulnerable and using the exact same device.
Your infant is more vulnerable because why?
Because the experience of making something happen is so much more gratifying to them.
In a small pilot study that Dr. Christakis conducted on 15 children, researchers gave toddlers 3 toys. First, a plastic guitar, then an iPad that played musical notes, and finally an iPad with an app that rewarded the kids with lights, colors, and sounds.
So at a very specific time, the research assistant will ask the child to give what they're playing with back.
To give it to the research assistant.
To give it to the research assistant.
Give it to me.
66% of the time, with a traditional toy, the child will do just that.
With the iPad that simulates that, they give it back almost with the same frequency.
Thank you.
But with the iPad app that when they push on it, it does all kinds of things, they're much less likely to give it back.
With a more interactive iPad app, the percentage of kids willing to hand it back to the researcher dropped from 60% to 45%.
Give it to me.
It's that much more engaging.
It's that much more engaging, and that's what we find in the laboratory.
So we are literally creating dependence by giving our kids devices that are responding in a significant way. We are also, I'm going to share the next video with you.
We have decades of experience of research looking at television. But the one thing that a child never says or never thinks, if they're pre-verbal, when they're watching television, is, I did it. Because in fact, they've done nothing. It's entirely a passive experience. The iPad came along, or I should say touchscreen technologies more broadly, and fundamentally changed that. It has a contingent reaction, right? The child touches it and it makes something happen.
Is it possible for a toddler to become addicted?
The traditional definition of addiction would be very hard to apply to infants. But I will tell you that we are seeing children that are looking to their devices, oftentimes, for example, for self-soothing. It's a common experience now in pediatric offices for a child after they get their immunization to be handed a phone by the parent.
And they actually find the phone soothing?
They find the phone soothing, yes.
What does that say to you?
Well, it says to me that there's concern that they're not developing the ability to self-soothe. They're externalizing it. They're developing a dependency on this device for just that. I think the bottom line is toddlers need laps more than apps. They really need to be with their caregiver, having that back and forth interaction.
Interaction with a human more than an app on a mobile device.
And if they are going to be with an app, I think it's really important that parents recognize that they need to have those experiences of joint attention. So I'm much less bothered by a parent and a child playing with an app together, talking about what they're doing. That brings it much more into the sort of traditional toy realm. But a toddler who's handed an app and left to his or her own devices isn't really learning anything, and they're missing out on those critical human interactions.
That's the Jewish mother going. So this idea of, oh, I like this picture. When we talk about imprinting, when we talk, what is it that our children are looking for? They really should be looking for us for soothing. They should be looking to us for regulation. They should be looking for us. So this idea of giving our kids devices, there's an impact, a significant impact that it is having on them. Their habits with technology are giving them negative foundations or limiting the opportunities that they're going to have when they are older. The flip side is our habits with technology. What are our habits doing to our kids? And for that, I will share this video with you. This is actually a hard video to watch because you see the degree to which this is really a metaphor for our own technology distraction and what our kids are looking for.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
So one of the challenges that we see with technology, one is giving our children technology, their developmental impact, how it's impacting their self-soothing, their experience, their learning, their dependence on the devices. And the flip side is our own habits with technology. When we're on the technology and our children are trying to grasp it. And this is not limited to preschool, but it certainly is most impactful at this critical stage of development. Oftentimes, I've had this myself. I'm talking to one of my children, and I'll just reach into my pocket as a compulsion and start pulling my cell phone out. Not that I got a buzz, not that I got a notification, but it's just the compulsion that we have when it comes to technology. But what message is that sending to our kids? I mean, what message would it send if I was giving my whole speech like this with my phone in my hand? What the message it's sending is that you're not the most important thing in front of me. So if this is the message that it's sending in any situation, certainly with our kids and certainly with infants and with toddlers when they're trying to get our attention and our face is buried in the devices. When we ask older kids about some of the ideas of technology rules or guidelines in their own houses, so we get numbers like this. I've been fortunate to collect data from close to 4,000 kids across North America and get data from their parents as well. So 85% of parents report having set rules around technology in the house. 85% of parents report having set rules, which is actually really good, 85%. The only problem is that only 41% of kids report that there are set rules around technology in the house. So 93% of parents report having conversations about using the internet responsibly, which is amazing. 93%. That's in numbers. By the way, I'm a big numbers guy. I like talking about numbers, sharing numbers. Some people say that I spend too much time with numbers in my presentations. Actually, about 72% of people say I spend too much time talking about numbers in my presentations. But I do believe that data should inform what we're doing. Data shouldn't define it, it should inform it. My brother-in-law, when he was expecting his 5th child, he decorated the nursery in an Asian theme because he read a study that every 5th child born in America is Asian. So, yeah. So data, it should inform, it shouldn't define. So informing, 85% of parents say there are set rules in the house, 41% do. 93% of parents report having conversations about using the internet responsibly. That's amazing. Except only 31% of kids say that their parents have had these conversations with them. And 25% of parents report that their kids have been disturbed by online images and videos, and we get 63% from kids. So there's clearly a disconnect. And one of the things that I think it goes back to this communication and this idea. One of the ideas, whenever I have an audience, I like to try this. I hope you'll indulge me. I like to practice my mentalist skills. So can we do that? Is that okay? I'm going to do it anyway, so if you can validate me, that'd be great. Yeah? Okay. So the way it works, the mentalist works, I ask you a question, and then I'm going to do a magic mentalist move, which goes like this, and then you're going to all give me an answer at the same time. And if I'm right, then the answer will appear on the screen. Okay? Oh, this isn't going to go very well. Okay? Oh, okay? What is 1 plus 1? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wendy. I have one fan out there. Okay. All right, you guys weren't so impressed, so let's try another one. Your child comes home from school, okay, and you say, how was your day? I heard fine, good. Can I get a round of applause? The really good parents in this room, you won't let your kids get away with a fine, good, no, no, no. You will follow up with the ever important question of, what did you do today? Can I get a round of applause? So I have a confession. I am not a mentalist. I don't know if anyone knows that. But this is actually the conversation that goes on in every single home across North and Central America, at least. I was in Panama a couple years ago, and I asked the same question, and the kids also said nothing, which I was surprised because they don't even speak English down there. So I was expecting like a nada or something. They said nothing. So these are some of the challenges: social, psychological, behavioral, day-to-day, developmental. We have so many challenges when it comes to technology. So the question really becomes, what can we do? Well, I'm out of time. Thank you so much. It was great having you here. So it's critical as parents, no matter what age our kids are, no matter what the age is, there are 3 key areas we have to know. We have to know the devices that we're giving them access to, whether we're giving them or just giving them access. What are the devices? We can't just give them something that we are not familiar with. We have to know the content that they are being exposed to. So there is age-appropriate content, and we need to look at that based on the age. So I can't tell you how many parents of 10-year-olds or 8-year-olds are telling me that their child is playing Fortnite and they're addicted to it, but Fortnite is rated 12 plus, I believe, or 14 plus. It's not for younger kids, so it's not even age appropriate. But then when we look at the reasons behind it, so for example, Instagram is rated 12 years old plus, but if any of you looked at the content, I don't think you would think that Instagram was appropriate for your 12-year-old and what they have access to. So it can't just be that we look at the age recommendations. We should look at the age recommendations. What is age appropriate? What is developmentally appropriate? The content that we're giving them, and more than the content is the development and their personal personalities and their dependence and their relationship with technology. We all know that some of our kids are going to be more dependent. They need more restriction, more guidelines, more rules, more oversight. And we have to look at the broader picture. It's not just about a specific app or a specific behavior. We have to look at their interactions with those apps and with those behaviors. Thoughtful and deliberative engagement with technology is the key for helping our kids grow up in this technology-driven world. As parents, we need to be extremely engaged. Oftentimes, it's counterintuitive, but when we give our child a device, we think that it's making it easier for us in some way. They can play more video games, they can play. And Joe, here's actually a quick parenting tip, and I've learned this from experience. Sometimes our kids will come home from school. How's your day? Fine. What'd you do today? Nothing. Can I play, Madden? Madden's a football game on the device. And so, okay, you can play 15 minutes, right? Most parents will, hopefully set a limit. So what happens after 15 minutes? We actually forget about them for about 3 hours, is usually what happens. And you're like wondering, why is it so quiet and peaceful in the house, right? And so we forget about them. And then we panic because we're like, oh my gosh, we're the worst parents ever. Like, our kids have been playing video games. And then, we go and we say, get off the Xbox or Wii or whatever device you might happen to have. And so this is what never happens. They never say, oh, I hadn't realized that my time had expired. Thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. I will immediately turn it off. So that never happens. So here's the counterintuitive move is to say 5 more minutes. All right, 5 more minutes. We need to give kids time to transition. And of course, they'll all say, but I'm in the middle of a level, right? I'm in the middle of a level. No matter what game, they're in the middle of a level. But that idea that we need to give them time to transition, we as adults, we need time to transition. So we need to give that to our kids. But we shouldn't let it get to 3 hours anyway. We should set limits, and knowing their personalities, knowing their dependence on devices, we should set rules and guidelines. And those rules and guidelines might differ, from house to house. So it could be that the technology, no technology an hour before bedtime. It could be no technology an hour from the time you came home. It could be a total amount of screen time, for 30 minutes or an hour. And if it's a younger child, like we're talking about tonight for preschoolers, the technology engagement shouldn't be something that they do on their own. It should be something that's done with you. It's a collaborative process. So these are the ideas, being thoughtful and deliberative and approaching technology. The truth is, it's exhausting being a parent today. That's just it. It's exhausting. And so we think that when we give them a device, it'll make things easier. It actually makes things a lot harder because now we have to really worry and monitor and regulate another device, another item. Our kids cannot self-regulate, no matter what their age, whether they're 2 or whether they're, 20. They cannot self-regulate. They need help. And so our job as parents becomes to help them self-regulate when we give them a device. 6 suggestions for family success. Screen time should be age appropriate. We should follow whatever guidelines we have. We learned for the early childhood, up to 2 years old, really extremely limited, almost no screen time. Then above that age, no more than an hour a day. And even with that hour a day, it should be together with the child. Have tech-free time. Go dark for dinner. Have personal rules, family rules, your own rules. Follow them. I'll confess something to you, that I have a personal rule that during chakras, when I'm wearing tallis and tefillin, I do not have my phone with me. I keep it in the locker, the white cloth locker. No need for the applause, please. The good news is that my chakras is down to 6.5 minutes, so that's the really good news. But no, having these rules, just setting these rules and guidelines, manage and model healthy technology behavior. Our kids are watching us, even 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. They go to school, and they model what they see. They take the blocks that we used to build like buildings out of, they walk around like it's a phone, right? So that's what they're doing. They're like this with a toy wooden block, right? So they're modeling what they see. So it's so important that if we want them to model good behavior, if they want them to follow us in engaging in good behavior, we have to model good behavior for them. Here's a crazy one, number 5. Actually play with your children. I know it's so 1990s, but it really, that interaction, you can't compare the experiences that our kids have with us. I'm a big experience person. I think it's so important, doing things, taking your kids places. When we do a road trip and we go somewhere, I actually have a rule: no technology until we're out of New York City, which usually lasts about 3 hours, so that's actually pretty good. No technology, but really helping to regulate and show them there's times for technology and there are times for no technology. We need to demonstrate for our kids, and we should be transparent about it. Let them know, now's the time for technology, now's the time for no technology. And screen time should be a shared experience for younger kids. For kids in preschool, it should not be something that they're just doing on their own. It should be something that you're interacting with them. Now, my son, as I mentioned, he likes to play Madden football, so we play. He actually really enjoys it because he kills me every time. He loves that. I don't think it's really fair. I'm used to this, and he plays with this. But spending that time, just that time of him beating me every single time, it gives him a good feeling. He feels good about himself, and it's quality time that we're spending together. And that's in addition to the non-screen time that we spend together with our kids. As our kids get older, the challenges are going to get bigger. It's easier in preschool. If you think you're having a hard time in preschool, I feel bad for you. You'll see. So some of the challenges that we see as kids get older are 2 areas. We mentioned FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Anybody know what BE is? It is not Be'ezras Hashem, but it's, I would say close, but it's not even close. No, it's but everyone has syndrome. But everyone has. I think it's one of the biggest challenges that parents face, but everyone has. I was sitting, my son was playing Little League a couple of years ago, and there was a parent sitting next to me, and she just said how she bought her kindergartner a iPad mini. Because he's little, so he gets the mini, right? That's how he bought iPad. But because the older brother, who's in 10th grade, he has an iPad, so this one had to have an iPad mini. So that is not what I would consider thoughtful and deliberative. But here we are, we have a child who now has a device, and all these challenges that we're seeing, we're creating dependence, and we're creating a source of soothing, it becomes a problem. So we have what we call, but everyone has syndrome. And but everyone has syndrome is real. It's not just something that your kids imagine. It's actually, it's an animalistic drive, actually, and I will show you this short video.
So a final experiment that I want to mention to you is our fairness study. And so this became a very famous study, and there's now many more, because after we did this about 10 years ago, it became very well known. And we did that originally with capuchin monkeys, and I'm going to show you the first experiment that we did. It has now been done with dogs, and with birds, and with chimpanzees. But with Sarah Brosnan, we started out with capuchin monkeys. And there's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber for the task, the 2 monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, that's a far better food, then you create inequity between them. So that's the experiment we did. Recently, we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically the Wall Street protest that you see here.
So it's really innate. When we see what someone else has, it's something that we want. When our kids see that, that's why when they're in 5th grade, they're saying, but everyone has an iPhone 15. Everyone has the latest this, the latest that. And it's so powerful. The idea that we are here as a community is just remarkable. 16 schools together, just really amazing. It's a round of applause. The preschool director's Jewish Education Project really putting something like this together. It's an honor for me to be here. But this idea of tonight really should be just a first step. Tonight is the initial conversation. And it's so important to go back to your schools and define what the expectations are, what it is that you want for your kids when it comes to technology. There's power in numbers. So whether it's a kindergarten class or a pre-1A class or even a 1st grade or a 2nd grade, to be able to go back and communicate and say, hey, when we do play dates, does it need to be video games all the time? When we do play dates, does it need to be movies? We need to talk about the screen time and encourage our kids to have more meaningful and quality conversations and connections, even at these young ages. This is the foundation where they're starting to have these opportunities. And if we can address this early on through our schools, through our preschool leaders, I think we have great opportunities. As they get older, there are opportunities to manage their devices when it's age appropriate for them to have devices. Companies like OurPack, NetSpark, iOS, which is the Apple operating system. I don't recommend it. Well, I am a shareholder, but I do recommend it anyway. And also, we have such a resource in our community, Smart Connections. I don't know, they're one of the sponsors of tonight's event. Smart Connections, it's right here in Cedarhurst, and they can guide you with a lot of the technical questions that comes up with technology about devices and parental oversight and smartphones. And so we have tremendous resources, whether it's through our preschool leaders, our school leaders, or through organizations like Smart Connections. These are great opportunities for us to approach technology as a community in a healthy and responsible way. Just spending time on the devices with our kids is one piece. We really have to disconnect to connect. Meaningful experiences without the technology serving as a distraction. Think about Shabbos. Think about the quality interactions that we have with our kids. As they get older, improving dialogue with our children. All these things that we do with technology, it has to be in the context of a relationship. It can't be punitive. When it's punitive, our kids reject it, but if it's part of a relationship, then it's amazing how responsive they are if they feel that you're genuine in approaching the technology limitations. We've polled, as I said, 4,000 kids across North America. 51% of the kids said that their parents are the biggest influence on what they think is appropriate when it comes to technology. 51% was by far the largest group. The next largest group, at about 23%, were the kids that said no one influences me. You know, the kids, they're like, I play by my own rules. You know, they're really. But really, our behavior as parents is what's going to influence our kids, whether it's rules, whether it's communication, whether it's limiting. But more importantly, we have to model responsible technology behavior. If we are on our devices all the time, our kids see that, and that is what becomes their normal. We have to approach our technology habits as normal. We have to find balance. As we opened with, there's no one's going to say, don't use technology. Technology is amazing. It's a wonderful opportunity. But the flip side is you can't just give your kids devices and expect them to thrive without your guidance and without your regulation. So the goal is that we find some degree of balance within our own homes. We need to be thoughtful and deliberative when it comes to technology, and this way our children will grow up to be future ready, ready to conquer the world, confident and competent in their technology use, and ready to be the adults that we hope they will be. Thank you very much. I will, Alana, just a word from Alana Furtick.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I want to thank everybody again, and I want to say thank you, Ellie, for making us laugh, because that is how you're going to get through these years.